Weekly Thursday training call. My screen should be coming into view for you momentarily here, and then we're going to go ahead and start. Today's discussion is going to be how to build your purchase arsenal templates. So what I'm going to show you is a quick and easy way to really get into the software, get something pre-built so that you can minimize the time expenditure on creating reports. Now, before I do that, I want to run a couple of polls real quick because it's going to help us gauge what kind of content we need to work on for the next couple of sessions. So let me go ahead and launch the first one. I want to find out what is your biggest hurdle when you're creating Edge presentations. So if you would, go ahead and vote for me. A couple of different options there. I just kind of want to figure out, what's the hang up? Is it taking you too long to do? You can still do it without Edge, so maybe it's not necessary to you, or you just kind of lost and don't know where to start. Or is the problem that you just don't know how to explain the report to your borrowers in a meaningful way? It's got about half you voted. If you could, give me a quick push here. I want to get up a little bit higher so this is a little bit more meaningful stat for us to use. All right, it looks like we got about 60% voted, so I'm going to share the results with you just so you guys can see what they look like. So as you can see, we got 11% of you don't know where to start. That's good. Brand new users, that's wonderful, so I think you're going to like today's discussion. I'm pleased to see that nobody said I can still land the deal without an Edge presentation. That's awesome. I actually was expecting that to be a little bit higher, but congratulations, I really like that. 22%, it takes me a little bit too long to put a presentation together, and then 56%, I don't know how to present the information to the borrower. Excellent. All right. It's very useful information. Let me go ahead and hide those results. So today's focus, as I said, is going to be how to design purchase templates that you can use in any scenario. Obviously, time consumption is a big factor, so that was what I was kind of gearing today's call towards. But knowing that the presentation is kind of a hiccup for some of you, I will make sure that that's addressed towards the end of the call. We're going to actually go through the particular presentations, and I'm going to explain how you would actually talk to your borrower about this. What do you say about it? What are the points that you should focus on? And what are the points that maybe you don't understand, so you need to know? So with that being said, let's start with what these purchase arsenal templates are. So what we're trying to put together today is we're going to put together a series of presentations, and these are full presentations with several scenarios inside them. And the reason we're putting these together is so that you can immediately use these to copy into a new client when you want to use that type of presentation. So the first step here is you want to go up to the top and you want to hit New Client. Now, New Client is where you start when you want to start any kind of a total cost analysis or rent versus own. Now, in this case, because we're going to be designing some templates today, I'm going to make this a marketing report. Now, the difference between a marketing report and an individual report is that a marketing report doesn't have specific borrower information on it. The individual report does have the borrower name and it does have the property address. But remember, in this case, we're looking at specifically just kind of a top-level report that we're going to load others into. Teresa reports that she can't quite hear me that well. Let me see if I can turn up the volume just a tad here. And I have it maxed out, so let me just see if I can get it closer to my face. All right. So hopefully that's a little bit better for you. We are recording this call as well, so this will definitely be in our coaching call archive. And I'll show you towards the end of the call, we actually made a little bit of a change on where we are archiving all our calls. They're still on the main website, but we also published them in our knowledge base. So I'm going to show you where that's at towards the end of this call. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. So for this particular presentation, remember this is going to be a header for all of your templates. So I'm going to actually call this one Purchase Templates. Now the reason I'm putting a 1 in there is when I go to my View All tab, I want this one to be at the very top of the list so I can immediately get to it, and it's just easier to find for me. Now because the View All list sorts everything in alphabetical order, putting a 1 there is going to ensure that it's definitely going to be at the top of your list. And I'll show you the View All once we get a little bit further in and we're starting to create the second template. Now, part of this that's really critical is identifying which reports these are. So the basic reports you want to have put together, you want to have ready are a cost of waiting, you want to have a move-up buyer analysis, You want to have some basic purchase options. You want to have a rent versus own. You want to have an FHA versus conventional. And then you want to have some kind of an MI options report. So I am going to show you in depth how to create all of these reports, but I think you're going to be kind of surprised at how quickly you can put these together. So the friendly name down here at the bottom, and this is the very bottom field. I know it's sometimes hard to see my cursor, so I'm going to try and give you a little bit more guidance of where I'm pointing at here. But the friendly name is the very bottom field on your screen, just above the import button. And this represents the friendly name for your presentation. So this is not a nickname for your client. This is actually a nickname for your report, just kind of telling you what it is. So I'm going to start with the cost of waiting. So I'm going to use that for my friendly name. And then I'm going to continue on by clicking the right arrow. Now when we get to the goals section, now remember this is going to be a template, so the goals aren't as important as if we were taking this directly from a borrower. So when we're doing a cost of waiting analysis, we're going to be doing purchase options. So my goal here is going to be purchase a new home. Now I should note that purchase a new home has some logic behind it. This tells Edge not to ask you questions about your current mortgage. So having checked that box, I'm going to go ahead and hit the right arrow. Now on this screen, you can see that there's still areas where you can detail their current monthly mortgage, but you don't necessarily have to enter all this information, specifically if you're building a marketing report. You can always come back to it later if you wanted to be able to add additional information, but I will tell you that it's going to make your life a little bit easier if you do enter a property value or purchase price here. What's going to happen is when you build your new products, it's automatically going to pull that purchase price into the new products for you. So we'll put in $300,000. And then I'm going to hit the right arrow to continue along in the wizard. Now when we get to the affordability, this section is specific for a borrower. So I'm actually not going to enter this information for this particular template, but when you copy these out to build new presentations, you will want to come in and edit this information so you can give a more well-rounded financial picture for your borrower. Now that being said, I'm going to get directly over to the products. Now on a cost of waiting analysis, you have options on what you can show. I'm going to show you all 4 options. Now the 4 options that are available here are going to be a buy now scenario. Then I'm going to show an option of what would happen if the borrower waited for a price or rate drop. Then I'm going to show what would happen if the borrower waited, that price didn't drop, and the rates went up. And the final option I'm going to show is a worst case scenario. The borrower waited and both rates and price went up. So the first option I'm calling buy now. Now this is not a refi, so I'm going to leave the refi toggle to no. The current mortgage checkbox, we want to leave that unchecked. That is specifically only for when you're resubordinating a lien. So you never actually want to check this box. When you're doing a resubordination, you're actually going to copy the current scenario and then change one of the liens to be a new option. If you'd like more detail on how to do resubordinations, click on Help and go to the knowledge base and just type in resubordination. There's a video that shows you exactly how to do it step by step so that you can construct these in your Edge accounts. For today's discussion though, we're just going to show a buy now option versus a couple of potential waiting options. We want to show the borrower the potential pain of waiting. All right, so let's just do a 20% down, and then we'll put a rate that we can get for now and a term. Now this one's going to be a conventional loan, so I left the FHA toggled to no here. Now when you click the right arrow, it automatically saves your data inside Edge. So just remember that anytime you make an edit inside the Edge wizard, click one of the arrows here, either the right or left arrow, and it will save the data from that screen. Now also keep in mind for everybody who's brand new to this call, I am monitoring the questions on the side. So if you do have questions as we're running through these presentations, please do enter them into the questions area in your GoToMeeting toolbar. Now that may have already collapsed for you. If it has, there's going to be a little orange arrow in the top right corner of your screen, and when you click on that, it'll open up the panel again. And just towards the bottom of that panel, you're going to see a questions area. Type those in. I'll be monitoring from the side here, and as they come in, I'll try and address them. Mark had a question. He said, can we get these templates already filled in and we can go in and edit the information? Actually, you can't, Mark. There's no way I can push them to you. However, this is a great exercise in creating these. So that's what I'm showing you today is how to create these guys so that you can immediately just use them to copy out. Now, one of the reasons that I wouldn't push these into your account is, one, I don't know your fee structures, I don't know your rates, and quite frankly, I don't know which products you're sponsoring the most. So I'd really rather you do this so you can personalize it for you. That way it makes more sense when you use them. Now, that being said, let's get back into our presentation here. Now, I've entered the basic loan options, and now I'm just going to enter closing costs. So remember, on this one, because this is going to be a template that you're going to use for later, you're going to make minor alterations to your closing costs based on what the loan amount's going to be, or based on what kind of rate they can qualify for. Maybe they've got to pay additional to lower the rate, or to get back to what you're talking about. And I'm sorry, other people are telling me that my volume's a little low. I am talking as loud as I can, and my volume is all the way up. So I encourage you, please turn up the volume on your devices, see if you can get a little bit more out of that. I can't do anything more from this side at this point, but I will certainly try and talk as loud as I can here. William had actually just a quick little comment. He says, that was a great question. I've asked it before, and you give a great answer as usual. Just saying, thanks, William. I appreciate the feedback. And Iris, about the volume, I'm sorry, I can't make it any louder for you. If there's any way you can turn up volume on your device, or you might actually want to call in to actually listen to this on the phone. You might get a little bit better volume on the phone than you would out of your machine. But let's get back over to our presentation here. Now, closing cost details, there's two ways to do it. You can either go into the details and line itemize them, or you can do ballpark costs. Now, I'll tell you that for purposes of a template like this, you probably are going to want to have an itemization in here, so it's a little bit easier for you to modify the data once you get it into your new template. And actually, let me see if I can turn this up just a tab. Nope, I can't, sorry. All right, so if you already have templates assigned, that's great. You can actually just pull in a template and make it part of this. I've created my fee templates in here, and you can see that what I've done is I've left a couple of these fields blank because I'm going to need to modify them on a case-by-case basis. Generally, to input these, the easiest way to do this is pull a fee worksheet from a transaction that you've recently closed. That way you know what the itemization is, and you can start just mirroring that same itemization into Edge. Now remember, you're going to leave the hazard insurance reserves and the property tax reserves blank because those are going to be different on every scenario. Now, loan origination, if you have a set fee, you can use the set amount, but this is another one that some people end up leaving blank on their template so that they can fill that in on a case-by-case basis. Now, I'm not going to go too far into the fees today because I really want to focus on creating the presentation structures for you, but if you need additional help on the fees, please let us know over in support. Just email support@mortgagecoach.com. Let us know what you're running into in terms of the fees that's causing issues. In fact, even send us one of your fee worksheets and we can help you design a template in your account so that you can use that. Now, once you've filled out all of your fees here, or you've pulled down a template like I did, you're going to hit Apply to Loan. Now, that is going to gray out the boxes here. These boxes are basically pulling the information from your fee detail. So if you needed to make edits to any of these fees, you would need to click on the Closing Cost Detail button, go back into your detail screen, and edit the individual fees. Now I'm going to assign 15 days of prepaid interest, so just typing 15 in there. Now, one thing to point out here, if you want to know how much that equates to on this loan, just hover your mouse over your data entry point after you've entered your number, and it'll show you exactly how much that is. Now I'm going to go to the screen where the monthly costs are located. Now, part of this that's kind of critical is you don't want to put dollar amounts in here. Specifically for templates, you want these amounts to change with the loan amount or change with the property value. So in order to do that, you're going to hit the percentage button right here next to the field. And then you're going to type in a percentage that corresponds to what you can offer. Now, an easy way to figure it out, like I said, pull one of those fee worksheets, and as you're creating this, let's say you have a $300,000 loan, as you're creating this, you're going to actually put in a percentage and see what that equates to as a dollar amount. You can see I pulled $87.50 on this for hazard insurance. Now, if I look at my fee worksheet and determine, wow, it's actually a lot lower, it's only about $45 for hazard insurance on this $300,000 loan, I'm going to reduce this variable here. So maybe it's 0.2. $50 is pretty close. Maybe it's a little bit less, but you want to isolate what your ratios are, just kind of a generality on what ends up coming out for your hazard insurance and property taxes. So I'm going to do the same thing on property tax. I know here in California it's 1.25, but again, you might want to hit and miss a little bit to find out exactly where it is in your neck of the woods. And then there's no mortgage insurance on this one, so I am going to leave the mortgage insurance blank here. And I have finished my first product, which is called Buy Now. Now it's time to add an additional product. And before I do that, let me check and see if there's any more questions that I can get to. Jim, thank you for the volume check. I appreciate that. Iris's question, can you delete closing cost templates? I have a few junk trial ones that I don't want. Yes, absolutely. I will show you how to do that, but you can do that in your settings area. So I'll try and address that towards the end of the call here today once we get through a couple of these templates. All right, great. And thanks, Will, for sounding off on the sound check. I do appreciate it. All right, great. So let's get into our second product. Now, the way I got to that, by the way, everybody, was I hit the green Add Another Product button at the bottom of this last screen. Now, notice that because I have another one there, it disappeared. So if you don't have any products going forward in the wizard, you'll see a green button right under the Save As Template that says Add Another Product. And when you click that, it's going to give you a brand new open product. Now, at this point, I'm going to use the copy button. I don't want to have to redo all the work I just did, so I'm going to hit Copy From. And I'm going to copy my Buy Now scenario. Now when you hit OK, it automatically funnels that data into your loan scenario. So all I need to do really is rename this one. I'm going to call this one Wait for Drop. And this is going to show what happens if, okay, the borrower waited for a drop, they got the drop, it went down to 290, but in the time that they had to wait for that price drop, the rates went up. Now it's up to you on how much of a rate increase you want to use. Usually I would go anywhere from maybe 3/4 of a point to even a full point. You all know how volatile the rates can be. The bond market is constantly moving, and it's moving on a daily basis. So it's okay to assume a rather large jump can happen. You've seen it happen before. So it's up to you. You can do half a point here, you can do 3/4 of a point, you can do a full point. I'm going to do a full point for this presentation. And actually, Teresa reported that the phone-in volume is much better. So for those of you who are still having volume concerns, try changing from doing the audio through the speakers to doing audio through the phone. It'll actually give you the phone number to call so that you can call in. It'll take you a second to get through the GoToMeeting part, but then you should hear it a little bit better. Iris's question, when you hit Copy From, do the closing costs carry over, or do I have to go in and pick the same one? Great question, Iris. So they do come over when you hit the Copy button. Every part of that original loan scenario comes into the second one. So that's actually where we're going right now. So the two modifications I made to this after copying was I dropped the purchase price by $10,000, and I raised the interest rate by a point. Now when we hit our right arrow, you'll notice, as Iris pointed out, it sure does copy these over. So all of my closing costs came over. If I need to make any minor modifications to this, I'd want to go into the details and make minor mods. But remember, this is a template, so don't be too concerned with having exact numbers on this template. You're going to actually tailor, when you copy these out to your borrowers, you're going to tailor those closing costs to be exactly what they should be. But because I copied, if we were to go into the details screen, you'll see that all of my fees are indeed in here. So those copied over. And I can advance to the next screen without having to do any work on this one. The last step, remember I used those percentages, so it automatically calculated what my hazard and taxes are based on this new property value. And there's my Add Another Product button. So I've entered 2 products on this cost of waiting. Let's enter a third one. I'm again going to use that Copy From button, and I'm going to copy the Buy Now scenario again. So I'll hit OK. And then let's rename this one. Now remember, this is going to be the scenario where they waited for a price drop, but it didn't drop. It stayed the same. So I'm going to call this one No Drop, which means I'm not going to change our purchase price. I'll leave that one at $300,000, but they waited, and it cost them on the rate. So I'm going to boost that up by a full point, just like I did on the last scenario. Now when I hit the right arrow, my closing costs are all in there. I don't need to do anything with those. My escrows or my monthly costs are already in there. Don't need to do anything with those. Now I'm going to add a fourth product. Now the fourth product is going to be your worst case scenario. So I'm going to use that copy button again. I'm going to copy my buy now. And I'm going to rename this worst case. And you could call it wait too long if you'd like. There's all kinds of variations you can use. Feel free to change it up. You don't have to use the exact verbiage I am. I'm just kind of trying to give you a starting point so you can formulate your own idea on this. Now, because they waited too long, not only did the price go up by 10,000, but the rate went up by a full point as well. Now remember, copy button took care of everything for me on the closing costs. It took care of everything for me on the monthly costs. And now I can go to the analysis screen and see the results of my work. Now, when you get to the analysis screen, you have some options on how you want to present this to your customer. Now, as you can see, the difference between the buy now option and our worst case option is $204 a month. Now, what that equates to over time, the short-term interest savings, $14,000 in interest that they would save over a 60-month period of time. Now, when we get to the actual presentation, I am going to go through all the quadrants for you to explain this, but I want to touch on a couple more templates for you so that we can get these purchase templates going. Now, one decision you have to make on how to show this information is, do you want to show it as a savings difference or a difference in how much it's going to cost them? Now, when you're doing a cost of waiting, you might actually want to show them the pain of waiting. To do that, you can use this monthly savings benchmark, and you can change it to default as the buy now being the benchmark. That means everything's going to be compared against the buy now option. And as you can see, if they wait for a drop, it's going to cost them $89. All the way down the line, worst case, it's going to cost them an extra $204 a month. Now, when you go to the short-term savings, that's this bottom left area, you can also tailor the benchmarks in there. So you can use the drop-down selector here, select Buy Now as your benchmark, and it'll show you the pain of waiting for these. It's going to cost you $14,000 more in interest over the 60-month period of time if you wait to purchase this home. Now, total interest in MI paid is the default selection for the bottom right quadrant. I'm going to leave that in place because that is what I like to show, especially on these cost of waiting presentations. Now, the contact information, this is going to be a template, so I'm not going to add anything here. I'm going to move along and select my total cost presentation. Now, that is the default that you're going to choose, so you can see it's already selected. You have the option here on which of the products you'd like to show. A common question that comes through the support box is, how do I delete a product in Edge? Now, because Edge creates all the products dynamically, you won't have a delete button. However, there's an easier way. When you get to the end of the presentation, this screen right here, you can simply deselect the ones that you don't want to show. And this is also very useful for when you've already sent the presentation to your client with a bunch of options, and you've talked to them and they've said, you know what, those last two options, they're not even in the ballpark for me. I don't even want to see them on the report. You would come back to this screen and you would uncheck the options that you don't want to show. Then as soon as you hit a right or left arrow, it's going to save it to that live presentation, which means your borrower's presentation is going to update on its own. If your borrower is actually looking at the presentation when you make this change, it's going to take 3 to 5 seconds, but it will update on their screen. Let's see, a couple more questions real quick. Let's see, William's question, if you do 4 products and you want the bar graphs to go from best to worst, is there a way to reorder the products 1 through 4 to get that presentation order after you've created it? Great question, William. So what you would need to do, because there's no specific structure to reorder because these are created kind of in a left to right wizard fashion. What you would need to do is you'd actually need to use that copy function that I was showing you earlier to copy one product to another slot until you get them into the right slots. Now you can imagine if you already have 4 slots, there's no open slot to copy to. So it's going to mean that you do have to redo one of the products. But it's not too bad. It's going to save you a little bit of time to do that. But you can certainly restructure these by using that copy button. If you have only 3 products listed, that actually makes it much easier because you have an open product slot that you can use kind of as your clipboard. So you copy a product there, copy back to whatever slot you want to go to. All right, so down here at the bottom, we have our payment notes. Payment notes are very important because these are tied to double asterisks that are also represented next to the PITI payment that's shown on your presentation. So usually you want to put whether taxes and insurance are included in that payment. You can also put additional color about what's in the payment. Maybe you've got mortgage insurance on them. Maybe you want to put details about their qualification standards, like a minimum FICO score necessary, stuff like that. But you do have quite a bit of room in here to put a couple of good sentences describing what that information is related to. Let's see here. It looks like we have a couple more questions. Mark's comment was that was the same rate as the last, and maybe I made a mistake there, Mark. Let's see here. Okay, so we got 5.5 there, 5.5 on the no drop, 5.5 on the wait for drop, and 4.5 on the buy now. Now, some of you may have noticed I had a very quick way of going in and checking all my presentations in here, all my loan scenarios in here. And the way to do it is you use what's called jump buttons. So when you hover your mouse over the buttons in the bottom of Edge, you'll notice that on a couple of them, you have jump buttons that you can immediately get to a specific page within that section. Now, in the products section, that means you can jump to any product by simply hovering over products, then left-clicking on the desired one, and it will take you to that product so you can check it out. All right, so back to our presentation screen. So we've entered our payment notes. Now, at this point, we have the option to add additional color around what these are talking about. And specifically on the cost of waiting, I would encourage you, go ahead and put some additional information about this. Talk about, the worst case scenario is going to cost you $204 more, something like that. But again, you're going to want to modify that on a case-by-case basis. So for purposes of the template, you may want to just leave some generic verbiage here or a reminder of what you want to put in there. So as you continue through this wizard by using the right arrow, it's going to give you areas where you can update the more info section that appears behind each one of the quadrants. So that's what this text is here. Once you have completed those, you get to the very end of it. Now this is where you deliver it. You choose the method of delivery. Now for a template, I'm probably not going to put a quote date on here, but I'm going to do that on the individual reports as I create them. But you want to check to be notified on these, and you want to check to enable the call button if you do have call credits available. If you don't worry, you won't even see this, so it won't come into play for you. And the last part here is generate the link. Now I'm not actually going to send this link out to any of my borrowers, so I don't need to copy it at this point. I just want to get to the very end of the presentation so I have a link assigned to this. Now the trick here, when we get back to our purchase templates, is creating additional templates beneath the client we just created. So if we go back to our home screen, you can see I've got one purchase templates there. When I hit View All, and this is the whole reason I put a 1 before that name, you can see it now appears at the very top. And when I click the little arrow next to it, I've got my cost of waiting analysis. Now I want to group a bunch of different templates under this header. So the way to do that is left-click on the desired client here and hit Add Analysis. You could also click on one of the analyses that's inside that one and copy it. So if I want to hit Copy Analysis over here on the bottom right side of the screen, I'm going to copy it under the current client. This is the critical part to make sure that it lines up underneath that folder. So I hit OK. And this one, let's say, is just going to be my purchase options. So I'm going to change my friendly name so that it knows what it is. Now because I copied the entire presentation, most of this is filled out for me. So basically what I need to do is I need to go in and modify my products. So the buy now, I'm going to change this to be something like 300K purchase. You could even call it 300K offer, something like that. And then for my second one, remember this is no longer going to be a cost of waiting, so instead of a wait for drop option, I'm going to change this one to be 310K purchase. I'll modify my purchase price. And by doing that, it automatically knows, it keeps the 20% for you, so it adjusts what the down payment is going to be. And then I will put my low rate here, because we're assuming they're not waiting on these ones. The next step is to go to that third one, maybe this is a 320 option. So I will change my purchase price, put my rate back down, go to the fourth one, and I'll call this one 330K purchase. Now, obviously, you're going to want to choose a range that applies to your area so that it makes sense. If you're in Beverly Hills and you're showing a $300,000 purchase, it's not going to mean anything. So, you know, keep in mind you want to use purchase values that are relative to your area. All right, so I've changed my purchase price to $330 here, and I've got my 4.5. Now at this point, I'm done with this template. So I'm actually going to go back home. I'm going to hit View All, and I'm going to show you what we've created. Now I've got two different options underneath this one purchase templates. I've got my purchase options. I've got a cost of waiting. Now I want to put in a rent versus own. So what do I do with it? I'm going to take that cost of waiting, and I'm going to copy it. Copy the analysis under the current client and hit OK. I'm going to rename this with a friendly name of rent versus own. I'm going to toggle it from own to rent. And you'll see that once you do that, it actually changes a lot about what the wizard is asking for. So if this is a first-time home buyer, you could hit Get My First Home. There's two other options here you could choose as well. Remember, this is a template, so you don't really have any specific goals for your client in mind. But you do want to put in an annual, or a monthly rent and an annual increase amount. So let's say if I'm looking at these $300,000 houses, I can probably assume rent for the same type of property, you're probably paying about $2,000 in rent. Now, annual rent increase, I like to use the same percentage as I do for the property appreciation. So I'm going to use 3% annual increase. Now, this is generally, if you look at stats online, you'll find that housing prices over a 10-year span are going to increase about 3%. Regardless of what the market is doing, that tends to be the average. Now, in terms of the rent side, the average rental increase is around 3% as well. So I like to line those up just to make sure that I'm showing both sides of the equation equally. Now, if you want to assume monthly renter's insurance, you can do that here as well. But I'm going to leave out a lot of the other fields because, remember, this is a template, so I'm going to fill in specific information for the borrower when I copy this out for a new presentation. So my next step is to go and just check out the products, and you can see that it's got my cost of waiting stuff in here, so I probably want to modify this, or I can make this a rent versus own cost of waiting, and that's perfectly acceptable. So if I want to keep it just like this, I'm actually going to go back to my client screen. You can do that by just going down to the bottom bar and clicking on Client on the lower left. And I'm actually going to indicate that this is a cost of waiting as well. So this is a rent versus own cost of waiting. So I don't need to change any of my products. I've now created a third template. So let's see what it looks like in the home screen. Now under my purchase templates, I've got a rent versus own, I've got purchase options, I've got a cost of waiting. So good stuff. Now, if I want additional ones, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I am going to go through an MI comparison for you so you guys can see what that looks like. So I'll add an additional one here. I'm going to copy that cost of waiting one more time. We'll hit Copy Analysis under the current client. And for this one, I'm going to rename it MI Options. Oops, there we go. And I'm actually going to deselect the rent because I want this one to be an owner. I don't want to show a rent versus own report. Now note that when you select own, it doesn't necessarily mean they actually own a property. It's just telling Edge that you don't want to go through a rent versus own scenario. So when I select own, I can hit the purchase a new home goal and it's not going to ask me for the current mortgage info. Now I'm still going to use that $300 purchase price on this one because I want to keep these kind of uniform throughout the whole thing. But what I need to edit for the MI comparison are going to be my products. So for the first product, what I'd like to show is just a monthly mortgage insurance on a 90% LTV loan. So we're going to call this one 10% down with MI. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here and change my down payment percentage from 20% to 10%. I'll assume the same rate at 4.5%. If I needed to modify any fees in here, I would. Remember, this is kind of a template, so I'm probably not going to make any mods on this one. But the one thing I do need to add is in the third screen of each product, we're going to have to deal with the MI. So on a 90% loan, conventional at least, I'm probably going to have a 0.9 factor there. And it is going to cut off at 78%. So I'm going to leave the 78% in there. Now, one thing to note, this Calc MI on balance box, this is only for government loans. So don't use this one for conventionals. It's actually going to make your MI a little bit off. With conventional loans, they have this $202 payment. This is going to be monthly, and it's going to be exactly the same until they hit that 78% mark. On FHA loans, you have a little bit different type of MI. You have what's called declining balance MI, which if you were to check this box, what happens is it starts off at the 202, but as it gets towards the end of the amortization, it's only something like $20 because it's actually recalculating the MI payment based on the average outstanding balance every year. So you only use that, again, for government loans. So I've got my first one in there, and that's just the 10% down with MI. For this one, I'm going to show lender-paid MI. So you can use acronyms if you like, LPMI, or you can even write it out. And we're going to have that same, matter of fact, I'm going to copy from that 10% down MI so that it just absorbs my right equity percentage here, and it's already got my rate. And what I'm going to do here is, as a lender-paid MI, if I'm going to cover it as a lender, I need to have something to cover it. So either I'm going to build it into the rate, or I'm going to ask for a contribution from the seller, something like that. In the case I'm showing you today, I'm going to build it into the rate. So I will take the rate from 4.5 to, let's say, about 5 1/8. And then what I can do is go immediately to the monthly cost screens, and I can remove the monthly MI. So 2 steps on that. All we have to do is boost the rate, get rid of the MI. Now, to know what you would need to boost the rate by, you're going to need to consult your rate sheet just to make sure you've got your figures right there. But generally, you're going to find that lender-paid MI, you can cover it with about 3/4 of a point, sometimes a little bit less, just kind of depends what you're looking at. But again, consult your rate sheet. You want the exact figures on those ones. Now, my third product, I'm going to use the copy from button, and I'm going to copy that 10% down MI again. The third product is going to be a single premium MI buyout. So I'll call this one single premium. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with this product, talk to your lock desk and find out if this is available on the product that you're offering. But what this is this allows either the borrower, the seller, or you as the lender, if you wanted to do this as a concession, to bring in a single premium that basically buys them out of MI. So what you're going to do, when you're using a single premium, you need to have a field to enter that upfront premium. In order to do that, you're going to check yes on the FHA question here. Now when you do that and hit the right arrow, you'll notice that there's now an upfront MIP field at the bottom. And you can do this as a percentage. Usually the buyout is about 2 1/4. And for the most part, most of the programs will allow you to add it to the loan amount, but be careful if you're getting really high in the LTV. If you're doing a 95%, a 5% down loan, you're capped at 97%, which means you can only roll 2% of this upfront premium into the loan. So be careful with that. In this case, since I'm doing a 10%, I'm going to just roll the entire thing in. Now, also check your rate sheets to find out if this is going to cause a hit because they're going over that 90% mark. Now, if you want, you can also leave it unchecked, and that's going to mean that this amount is going to be called for at close, which is also an acceptable option. Now, my last product, I'm going to show an 80-10-10. Now, the reason I'm going to do this is because it lines up with my MI comparison in that I'm showing ways to either get out of MI or have to pay it as a monthly amount. And then we're going to show what it looks like over the long term. And the reason I like to put these in the templates is because the 80-10-10, the single premium, these are very specific types of scenarios, and you don't want to have to really think about how they're put together every time. You just want to go in and modify some details inside them. So for this one, we'll go with our 300,000 again, and actually I'll just do the copy button and copy the 10% down MI. Now for an 80-10-10, what you have to do is you have to tell Edge on the first product that it's going to take 20%. Now what this does is it tells Edge that the first lien has to be 80%. That's what this 240 is right here. So one of the most confusing things I see in the support box is people asking me, why is my 80-10-10 off? I entered 10% here. Isn't that just what I'm asking for the down payment? Not entirely. Not when you have two liens. When you have two liens, you want to make sure that this is representing how much that first lien is going to be. So the first lien is 80%, which means I need a 20 right here. Now when we get to the end of this, we're going to omit the MI. Don't need that. And actually, let me make sure I omitted the MI on that single premium. I think I did. I left it in there. That didn't need to be there. Okay, good. So back to this 80-10-10, we've got the first lien in place. We've removed the MI, but now we need to enter the second lien. Now in order to do that, we're going to click yes to the question, does this product include a second lien? When you hit the right arrow, now it's going to ask you for the second lien information. Now to find out exactly what we need to use for this loan amount, what we can do is go back to the first screen of this product, and you can see that that 60,000 is 20%. So I know that 30,000 is going to be 10%. So now I know that my loan amount for the second is going to be 30,000. So I will put that in right here. Put in the rate that I can get them on that second. Maybe it's a tad bit higher. And maybe it's an interest-only HELOC. Now in that case, what I did is I just made the term the same as my interest-only months. That's perfectly fine. That's going to be an IO loan on a 25-year term, and it's going to require a payoff of whatever balance is left at that 300 point. Now, if there's any additional costs that are associated just with the second lien, you can put them in here, but remember, for templates, we probably don't want these in here. We would just itemize them on the first lien. Now check out what we've got. I mean, some of you may be noticing here that I'm putting these together in a fashion that gives this cascading effect. And I like to do this because it makes more sense to the borrower to see it in this type of order. Obviously, my 80-10-10 is going to save them the most per month. There's no MI, and quite frankly, that second lien's got a fairly low rate, so we're not encountering too much of a headache on this one. Now, when we look at our 60-month area, you can see that there's a significant advantage to doing that 80-10-10. And when we look at the long term, we can see there's a pretty good difference between the 80-10-10 and the 10% with MI. However, we're pretty close with a single premium here, so that may be a viable option for the borrower. Just kind of depends on what they can qualify for and how high the rate is going to be on that second lien. All right, so now I've got a bunch of different options in here. So if I go back to my home screen and I look at my templates here, I go to View All, and I drop down this one purchase template, so you can see that I've now got 4 solid presentations that I can copy out at will. So how do I do that? If I've got a brand new client that I want to put together a rent versus own cost of waiting for, I'm going to come into my View All screen, just like I did. I'm going to left click on the rent versus own cost of waiting. I'm going to hit Copy Analysis, but this time I'm going to choose New Client. When you choose New Client and hit OK, it now has copied that analysis, but it's left the name blank. This is going to be separate from your templates, and it won't modify the original templates. So now I can call this one John Smith. And I can, if I want to make it a rent versus own, I can select rent and go through that. I can give it a friendly name. In this case, I'll do, let's say, just a regular cost of waiting. So now remember that when you're creating these on your own, there's a couple more fields here on the individual side. Things like notifying your partner when the report presentation has been viewed. You want to put a partner email in there. But at this point, I just need to complete some of the more sensitive information about this borrower that wasn't in my template. So I'm going to come in and go to the affordability section. And if I want to show the tax benefit on this presentation, I want to make sure and enter my borrower's tax bracket there. If I want to show a current savings balance and how that is depleted by the cash to close and how it continues to accumulate over time, I can enter that here. Again, specific borrower information. If I want to get qualifying ratios, I can enter the non-mortgage debt and the monthly non-mortgage debt payment. I can enter the annual gross income for that client. Now what happens when you enter these is when you get to your product screen, you'll see that on the right side there's DTI shown and there's LTV. Now the DTI, this is going to show you both ratios. So you'll get the housing ratio and you'll get the total debt ratio as long as you enter those fields back in the affordability section. So I'm going to put in some sample data so you guys can see what that looks like. So let's say 80,000. Non-mortgage debt is around $5,000. That's resulting in a $200 a month payment. And we'll pop in actually that would be 25% tax bracket. Now, if you don't know what your client's tax bracket is, you can hit Find Tax Bracket, and it's a very quick and easy way to isolate based on their income and filing status what their tax bracket should be. Now, the reason I did that is so I can show you this. You can see our DTI ratios now. I know these are a little small for you. I'm going to leave the screen on just for a second so you guys can see what it looks like. But there's two ratios showing. There's the housing ratio, which is at 23.7, and then there's the total debt ratio. So if you're initially qualifying this client, this is going to help you to guide them into the proper loans. If you find that you're looking at a 50% top end ratio, it might be a little bit of a problem. You might want to consider some debt restructure to go along with this. All right. William had a comment real quick. He said he'd like to see if this presentation could be converted into PowerPoint with screenshots and notes. Let me see what I can do, William. I might be able to do something like that. I don't think it would be a conversion of this. I think what it would be is I just build the PowerPoint presentation and load it out there. But I'll see what I can do for you. All right, so what we've discussed today is we've discussed how to build these templates, and then I just showed you how to implement them for a specific borrower. Now, because so many of you said you want to see how to present these presentations, I do want to get into that presentation real quick and show you what the live version looks like and how you would talk to your borrower about this. So let's go to our presentation screen, and I'm going to preview the report. Now keep in mind, this is the exact same report that your borrower sees when they click on your link. So you definitely want to know how to explain this. So let's start in the summary section. Now in the summary section, we have the basic loan details for each of the options that's offered. Now you can see that I can highlight these, and you can do so as well. When you go into a preview like this, anything you left click on will highlight. So if you click on a header row, the entire row will highlight. If you click on an individual cell, just that cell will highlight. So specifically, when I'm explaining this cost of rating analysis to my borrower, I'm going to look at the rates, because those are definitely one of the primary factors. And I'm going to look at my loan amounts. My loan amounts are different on these ones because I'm representing different factors with each one of these scenarios. I might also want to highlight the monthly payment. And maybe I want to highlight that the buy now option is $204 of savings. So you see how it bounced the graph and it started the highlighting. William had a further comment. I won't be able to email that directly to you, William. It's going to probably take me a little while to get this together, but when I do have it ready, I will post it in our knowledge base. But I'll let you know when that's available. Again, it's going to take me a little time on that one. Normally when we present these by video because it's easier to see the flow on it. We don't necessarily translate it into written so that you can refer back to the video. So I'll see what I can do for you. Please do give me a little time to complete that task, though. All right, so up in the top left here, I want you guys to check out the payment stream. The payment stream is actually fairly important for you as the originator. It may not mean a whole lot to your borrower until you explain to them what it is. When you click on the payment stream, it just shows how many payments at what amount. Now for conventional loans, you're going to see a very, very simple payment stream like this. When you get to FHA loans, you're going to see that that MI that's declining is going to cause lots and lots of line items. Hang on one second. All right, there we go. Sorry about that. Just didn't want to cough in your ear. All right, so payment stream, we're basically just showing what the rate is going forward, what the total payment amounts are, and how many payments are at that rate. Now, when you do adjustable rate mortgages, you'll see that there's lots of line items that show the individual adjustments. So very helpful to be able to point this out to your client. Now the more info section. The more info section is going to show you 3 different areas. You've got a payment breakdown area, which shows just basically the details of that payment. It shows you the P&I, the property tax, and it shows you, excuse me, it shows you varying degrees of mortgage insurance as well. Now, in this case, I didn't have any mortgage insurance. This was all 20% down. So really what I'm looking at is the difference in the P&I payments. Excuse me, I'm kind of struggling with a cough here, guys. One moment. Okay, back and rejuvenated. All right, so the next step here is closing costs. Now, when you're explaining this part to your borrower, you're going to have them go into the fee detail. And when they click on those buttons, they can actually see what the individual fees are here. If you're explaining this to the borrower, you're also explaining this as, this is pre-GFE. What I'm giving you is an education on what the potential fees would be. These might be slightly different at close, but not much. This is going to give you a well-rounded picture of what you can expect. Now, when you're explaining what these are in terms of APR, prepaid escrows, whether they're financed in, APR fees, when you're explaining this to your borrower, it just means that when you're looking at the APR rate on your presentation, these are the fees that factor into that APR. You don't have to go any farther than that. You don't need to give a detailed explanation on what APR is. Consumer's not going to understand that anyway. And to tell you the truth, most of them are just shopping rate anyway. So they're going to see an APR that's going to come out on everything because compliance requires it. But what you can tell them is the APR is based on the costs that are associated with a loan. Things like mortgage insurance also factor into the APR, but that's all you really need to tell them about it. Now, prepaid escrows, these are your reserves. So a very simple explanation for those. These are going to be hazard insurance reserves, tax reserves. You might have mortgage insurance reserves as well. And then the financed category is, did we roll it into the loan amount, or are we going to require it at close? If we roll it into the loan amount, you would see yes down here on the finance part. Since I'm actually calling for all of this at close, none of it's being financed into the loan. Now, the third category here is your reinvestment strategy. Now, reinvestment is going to be a bit of an advanced topic, but I would encourage you to learn how to do this, because specifically when you're doing refinances for your borrowers or you're doing debt strategies for your borrowers, you're going to want to earmark that monthly savings that you're offering them. So for instance, you know, the buy now option here, it's $204 less than the worst case option. So wouldn't I put that away somewhere? Wouldn't I represent that that money either stays in their bank account, I could put it in their savings account here, or maybe I can put it into a new investment vehicle? Absolutely. For a cost of waiting, I may not do any reinvestments, but I do want you to be aware that this is where the reinvestment grid is. The top section is principal reduction payments. So if I had chosen to assign principal reduction payments to any of these, it would show in these fields right here. It would also adjust their freedom point as a result of those reduction payments. The middle section is where they're actually reattributing money back into their current savings account. So like that $204, I would put that monthly back into their current savings account and allow it to accumulate over time. The bottom section is for new investments. These are for things like you know, you're working with a CPA or a financial planner that says, hey, I've got a 4% portfolio that if we can get the borrower to start contributing to that, we can gain some long-term wealth. Maybe we can do some retirement planning, divorce planning for that matter. There's a lot of different angles you can take with this investment grid here. But I do want you to be familiar with it. So when you get the chance, I'd like you to go into the knowledge base and I'd like you to search reinvestment. And this is going to give you the full detail on exactly what you can do with this screen, because you can do a lot. You can do more than just earmark a monthly payment. You can actually specify when those payments start and stop. You can specify lump sum payments. You have lots of options there. So a little bit too advanced for today's discussion, but I would encourage you to go check it out in the knowledge base. All right, so that's our top left quadrant. Let's talk about the top right quadrant. The top right quadrant is a comparison of just the pity payments against each other. You're always going to find that one of these options is going to be missing a graph. And the reason is these are comparisons. The one that's missing a graph is the benchmark. Remember how I showed you back inside Edge, you can change the benchmark. So if I went back into my Edge presentation and I wanted to show this as that pain point of waiting, I would come back to my analysis screen here. I'm going to change the benchmark to be buy now. I'm going to do it for both the top right and the bottom left quadrants. Then I'm going to hit the right arrow. Now going back to my preview, you can see that we're still showing the old version right now, but this is going to update momentarily, and it's going to cycle those graphs to go the other way. There it goes. So that should give you an idea of how this adjusts on the fly. When you change something inside Edge, it changes the live version of the presentation. This allows you to have the conversation with your borrower if you want to start this off with the graphs the other way. Then as you're going through your conversation with the borrower and you're showing them this $204 cost, you can go back into your Edge and cycle it just like I did, and it's going to appear on your borrower screen within a couple of seconds. Now you can gear the conversation towards, look what it's going to cost you if you wait. It's going to cost you an extra $200 a month, and then over the 60-month period, it's going to cost you an extra $10,000 in interest. Now the more info section behind this top right quadrant is specifically, it's just the main details that we were seeing over the summary screen. It does show the pity payments against each other, but I will draw your attention to this part. It shows the tax bracket percentage, and it shows the property appreciation rate. So if you wanted to point that out to your borrower as what are the assumptions you're using for this presentation, you could show them in there. Now, bottom left quadrant. When you're talking to your borrower about this, this is probably the one that people have the most trouble with. And the reason they have trouble with this is they're thinking that monthly savings times 60 should give me 60-month savings. Not quite. It's a little bit different. The bottom left quadrant is not just comparing the pity payments against each other. Instead, it's comparing the unrecoverable costs of the loan. So as I'm talking to my borrower about this, I'm telling them, I've already explained the top left section, I've touched on the top right section, and I've told them it's going to cost you $204 a month more to wait. But, Mr. Borrower, I'd like you to take a look at the bottom left section now. The bottom left section is showing you just the unrecoverable costs of the loan. We're comparing them against each other to show exactly which one costs the most. Now the costs that we are discussing today are interest, mortgage insurance, and any closing costs. Now what we do, and when I'm presenting this to a borrower, I have them click on the More Info button on that lower left quadrant because I want to show them. The way we're generating this figure is we're taking the total interest in MI that they're paying. We're subtracting out the tax benefit. Then we're adding the closing costs. That gives us a total net cost of this $39,422. We do that for each of the products. And if you're not showing tax benefit, that wouldn't be part of the equation. It would just be interest in MI plus the closing costs to give the total cost. But since I am showing tax benefit, it is being subtracted out of that interest in MI, and then we're adding in the closing costs. So our totals are shown in the orange line here. We compare those totals against each other to give our comparison for the short-term period of time. So keep this in mind. I would highly encourage you, if you need a refresher on how this is calculated, go into the knowledge base and you're going to see, as a matter of fact, let me show you exactly which one. When you click Help inside Edge and it takes you over to the knowledge base, this one at the top left here, How to Read the TCA, I would highly encourage you to watch this one. It's a 5-minute recap of exactly what we're discussing right now. It's not so much how do you present to your borrower, but it's how do you read it, what does it mean? All right, so as I'm presenting this to my borrower, I've told them to pop out the More Info sections. I've also got a preview open on my screen so I can highlight specific areas that I'd like to draw their attention to. So I'm going to talk about the cost of the loan. I'm going to talk about the fact that they're paying principal on each of these loans, but we're not viewing this as a cost. They're retaining that in the form of equity. So instead, we're just looking at the cost they can't get back. That's the interest in MI and the closing in points. Now the tax benefit is there because it does offset those costs. You know, they're going to get a tax benefit out of home ownership. So we subtract that out of that interest in MI paid, add the closing costs in, and we get our totals right here. Now when we get to the bottom right quadrant, interest in MI paid, this is actually probably the simplest one to explain. This is literally just the total amount of interest and mortgage insurance that they would pay between each of these products. This is not a comparison like the other graphs are, so you're going to find that you won't have an empty graphic down at the bottom. These are specifically just totals. And when we hit our More Info section, you can see this shows the home value as it's being appreciated over time, and we use the 3% appreciation at the 15-year point. You know, they've got different varying values. Now notice the worst case has the highest value. Now, why is that? It's because on the worst case scenario, we assume that they waited too long and the property value went up. The purchase price went up. In that case, they've got a little bit higher starting point for that appreciation to begin. So they are going to have a higher value property in the end. However, look at the difference between, our total interest in MI at the bottom here, 177 versus 137. That's a $40,000 difference. And this is just interest because there's no MI on any of these loans. So that's a huge difference in buying now versus waiting for the worst case. Generally, 467 versus 482 in property value, okay, we've got about $15,000 difference there, but we've got a $40,000 difference in the amount of interest you'd have to pay to get that little bit of extra equity. So keep it in mind when you're showing your client this, there's certain parts that are going to look appealing about the worst case, but you've got to weigh the factors in. That the real factor on all of these loans is how much interest are you going to pay over time. And if you're developing debt reduction strategies or if you're developing principal reduction strategies on these loans, you'll find that the amount of interest that they're going to pay is going to be significantly less for those because they're not responsible for the loan as long. They're cutting off incrementally how much interest they're going to have to pay. So hopefully that gives you guys a good idea of how to present this to your borrower. It's, what we want to draw their attention to really in any case inside EDGE is what are the main factors that they were concerned with when you talked about goals. When you asked them the question about, what's your goal for this? Are you buying a home just so you don't have to pay rent anymore? Are you buying a home because you want to develop some long-term equity and net worth? Or are you buying it because somebody told you you should buy a home instead of throwing rent away? All are great goals, but they help you to address what the client's real concerns are. Is their goal to pay off a mortgage a little bit early so they can be debt-free? If that's the case, you're probably going to spend a good chunk of your time in that reinvestment grid showing your client what happens if they do that principal reduction payment. If the client has told you they need a nest egg for retirement, well, this is a great way to do it. Let's show them how to show reinvestment down at the bottom here. Show them how to get a good rate of return on a good portfolio and what that would be at the 15-year point. Now, another thing to remember is that everything in here is editable. You can't edit the specific report on this part here because you don't want your client to be able to edit it. You edit it inside EDGE. So anything you change inside EDGE, say for instance I want to get rid of a couple of those products. Maybe I don't want to show the wait for drop or the no drop. I just want to show buy now in worst case. Once I deselected those, I'm going to hit the right arrow. And then when we jump back over to the analysis screen, you can see it's already adjusted. Now I'm just showing two simple options. And this is perfectly fine. Remember when I told you in the beginning, you can show all four options if you want, but you don't have to. Choose the ones that you think are going to be the most, not influential, but have the most impact for your borrower. If you don't feel that all four options would be beneficial, don't show them. It's okay. You can show two options, and this is a great report, just like it was before. Just we do want to show them there's a cost to waiting. There's a cost to doing different types of loans. And the total cost analysis is the only tool that's going to show them that. So we could always give a rate sheet. We could always give a fee worksheet to our borrower, but it's not going to mean anything. They don't see the long-term ramifications of what each loan is doing. By doing it this way, you are showing them long-term. It's going to cost you an extra 10 grand in interest. The principal that they're paying over the course of both loans is going to be exactly the same. At the end of the term, they've paid the entire amount of principal. But the interest is really the key factor. So that's the part that we need to make sure we're educating our borrowers about. You can always refi into a better interest rate down the line if it's available, but right now rates are the lowest they've been in history. I mean, they're still, obviously they were a little lower a couple months back, but they're still at all-time lows right now. I mean, the fact that you can get a 4.5% interest rate on a loan would have been unheard of 10 years ago. So focus in on the factors that your borrower really cares about. Are they worried? Are they worried more about monthly savings? If they are, okay, you can show them the monthly savings. But you also want to educate them on how that monthly savings translates into the overall savings on the loan. There may be cases where the monthly savings is kind of negligible, but the interest savings gets huge. Completely up to you on what kinds of loans you want to show. But when you're educating your borrower, make sure to point out that interest, point out the mortgage insurance, point out the things that they can't get back. All right, so with that said, I know I've gone a little bit over today. We did record today's session, and this will be available. Let me show you where that's at, actually. If you go to our support center, you can see there's actually a new link here called click here to access our coaching call archive. When you click on that one, this is going to show you the total archive of everything. So this is all the Tuesday calls and the Thursday calls. So you can see that here's our April category. The Thursday training from today will be at the bottom of this list by the end of the day today, and you can always review this. So thank you very much for joining. I had some great information from your poll results early on today, so I'm going to try and tailor next week's discussion to be maybe an interactive element. I'll bring somebody else on the call with me, and we'll do a little bit of role play on presenting the TCA. So with that said, have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me, and come back next week. Thank you.